What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and we're about to get into some really important stuff. But first, I want you to know what this podcast is all about. This podcast is all about helping you to learn from the greatest minds in the world, improving all aspects of your life, and helping you shine like the sun, allowing you to burn anybody who spends too much time exposed to you. Hold on, wait, that analogy didn't work at all. Okay, never mind. Forget that analogy. Let's get into this episode about the book, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before by Dr. Julie Smith. I really enjoyed reading this book, and Dr. Julie Smith is all about what I'm all about, which is helping people to get access to things that they might not otherwise be able to. And she says in the book, hey, not everyone has access to therapy. And so what she wants to do is to provide the tools that she uses in therapy for everyone out there through her book, which is what I'm trying to do with this podcast, which is to provide the knowledge from great minds that you might not otherwise be able to access or might not have time to access. And this is such a great book. I really, really dig it. And I actually recommend that you pick up this book after listening to this podcast and at least doing the exercises in the book. They're phenomenal. Now, I went to therapy this one time. It was when I was young. And I was just expecting too much out of that one therapy session. And the therapy session was not good. But also, I was not good as well. And because of that, I took a step away from it after going to a couple therapists, actually. And then eventually I did get into therapy for a season. But I haven't really done therapy in a very long time and not for a prolonged amount of time. And this has actually inspired me, even though I got the tools from her in the book, to actually get into therapy once again. So I am actually looking for a therapist. And I'm wondering, would you like to be my therapist? There's no license needed. All I need is for you to think positive as you treat me. That's all you need, right? To think positive. I'm just kidding. That's a terrible idea. But what I like about Dr. Julie Smith is she's very real about being human. Very real about the fact that she struggles too. And what we don't need is another talking head that says, just be happy, just be positive. Positive thinking fixes everything. Because the struggle is real, and if the voice that you are listening to is telling you just to be happy and clappy, that voice might be selling you something that is not based in reality. So, one of the things that she says is that people go to therapy because they want to get rid of all their painful emotional moods and feelings, and this is impossible. You have to deal with your emotions and your feelings in the same way you manage pain in your body. Because sometimes you develop a headache. Sometimes you get diarrhea. Sometimes you get a headache from your diarrhea. And then you pull a hamstring. You can't stop these things from happening, but you can manage them with physical therapy, Advil, and stretching. So what you need to know is life isn't about being happy and content all the time. What life is about, according to Dr. Smith, is it's about stepping up to challenges, it's about adapting to change, and it's about making it through another day. Look at pro wrestlers. What do? They take on challengers inside and outside the ring. 1 minute, you're body slamming someone. The next minute, you're in a headlock, feeling lightheaded, getting hit with a chair. But do they die? No, because of choreography. Do you think they're happy while they're doing this? No, they're not. Now, one thing you need to understand is there's this happiness myth that we are made for happiness, but we are not made for happiness. We are made to spot danger, to stay safe, to be part of a group, and to search for essentials like food and water. And so your main job is to stay alive. And yes, sometimes that coat hanger looks like a person in your house, but you have developed that fear of coat hangers that are shaped like men because in the past, a person could kill you And of course, they still can. But now your body's just reacting to what all of our bodies have been conditioned to over thousands of years in order to stay alive, in order to live another day. So your emotions may be telling you something about what's going on, but you can't rely on them as the end all and be all of what's going on. I love this one quote by Naval Ravikant, which basically says, your feelings don't tell you about the reality of the situation, just your assessment of it. So one of the things that your emotions may be telling you is about something that you need either physically or mentally. Maybe your emotions are telling you that you're tired, you're hungry, you're over-caffeinated, but they also may not be telling you anything. Because sometimes you're afraid of something that isn't there, like a coat hanger, like an alligator-shaped log, like the sound I just heard in my house that sounded like a burglar, but it just turned out to be something that fell down, that I set up poorly. And so what we need to do with our emotions and feelings is to look at the facts. Because if you don't look at the facts, what you're going to do is you're going to end up hurting the people around you. You're going to end up getting stuck in a rut. And more than likely, you'll end up in a vicious cycle of low mood. And the thing about vicious cycles is sometimes they're hard to get out of once you're in them. But the good news is you can get out of them. And the way you get out of them is by having a relationship with your emotions to understand them. Because once you understand them, you can change how you respond to your feelings, right? Your feelings are like people you know, right? Once you understand them, you can respond to them in a way that is healthy so that you can coexist with them. Because the thing about it is you are not going to be able to ever get rid of your feelings, ever get rid of pain. Pain is just a part of life. And if you try to fight against them, it only becomes worse. So don't fight them. Learn how to deal with them instead. Think about your feelings like you think about the people in your life. You can't fight them because if you do, you'll end up having to make a statement to the officers and you will more than likely end up in handcuffs. So don't put yourself in physical handcuffs. Don't put yourself in emotional handcuffs. Learn how to deal with them. And your first instinct might be to numb out your emotions with television or alcohol, but this is not going to work because you'll end up in a vicious cycle of, numbing out, and then all of a sudden your emotions come back as soon as you turn off the TV or as soon as the alcohol wears off. And one thing I've learned about dealing with my problems through alcohol, which is something I did when I was young, is alcohol would just create more problems for me, new problems for me. And you know what's worse than dry heaving? Dry heaving and then having to call your friends and apologizing for your behavior. Okay? So take it from me, take it from Kanye West, because that man was drunk as a skunk when he ran up on the stage talking to Taylor Swift about her music video. Don't use alcohol to deal with your problems. It will create nothing but more problems. So what Dr. Smith teaches is you need to develop an awareness and an acceptance of your emotions and let them run through you. And as you let them run through you, you might have these thing called thought biases. There's a number of them listed in the book, but I will list two that I think are very common. One of them being mind reading, right? You think that someone is angry at you because you haven't heard from him or her, and you start to catastrophize about what they're thinking, even though you don't know what they're thinking at all. And another one is overgeneralization. So overgeneralization looks like this. You have one bad job interview and you just say to yourself, oh, my future is ruined. But you don't realize that there's another Zaxby's down the street that you can go apply at. So when you start dealing with these thought biases, what Dr. Smith recommends is to write it down in the moment, right? Or talk it out with somebody. Whatever you do, get that stuff out of your head. Don't believe everything you think. That's an important quote for you to live by. And I've had to do this myself. One time I had this situation where I did a gig and I was expecting the video from the gig, and the company that did the video was not sending me the video, and I sent them multiple emails. They didn't respond. And then all of a sudden I started thinking to myself, oh man, they're not going to give me this video. I really need this video. It's going to help me out a lot. And I started freaking out. And then I called my buddy Ross, and my buddy Ross starts talking to me calmly, and he talks me off the ledge. And he's like, look, man, first off, it's still early. Second off, you don't know what's going on in their camp. And stop freaking out. Stop catastrophizing the situation. And he talked me down. I was better after having that conversation with him. And a couple days later, after a couple more emails, they responded and they're like, hey, we're so sorry. We've been super busy. Here's the video. So when you have thought biases, make sure that you write it down or talk it out. And as you are dealing with pain, notice that emotion. Notice that it's happening. Feel it and let it pass through you, and it will. Now, this is her words, and according to her, over time, you'll get good at this by saying to yourself, oh, I'm having this thought. Oh, I'm noticing these sensations. I know it sounds a little too good to be true, but I believe with practice, you can get to a point where this stuff is very manageable. And as you're going into low mood, you have to think about your thoughts. You have to think about what emotions you're experiencing, what physical sensations you're having in your body, what behaviors you're displaying, because these 4 categories, these 4 things, all interact with each other, and they all kind of feed off each other to get you to stay in that low mood. And as you're in that low mood, and also when you're in a good mood as well, what you need to do is focus your attention on thoughts of what you actually want. Not just the bad stuff that's happening right now, but what you actually want, right? Not just what you don't want. And one of the things you got to do is you got to stop ruminating. How do you stop ruminating? Ruminating is basically the feeling that you're putting your emotions through this washing machine, and they're just sitting inside of you and just going around like a cycle. And what you got to do when you're in that situation is you got to move yourself. You got to say to yourself, hey, stop. You're doing this thing again. You need to change your location, move around. And one of the best things to do to remedy ruminating is to reach out to someone on the phone or in person. And as you're dealing with rumination, if you can talk to somebody, that'd be great. If you can't, one question that you need to ask yourself is, what would I do if I were at my best? Okay? So, as you're ruminating, as you're struggling, as you're dealing with it the way that I just explained, also ask yourself, what do I want? Which is what you would do if you were at your best. So, whether that's go for a run, whether that's go outside for some sunshine, whether that's cleaning the house, whether that's taking a hot shower to relax, do something that you would do if you were at your best and act like you were at your best. And that will actually help you to move in the right direction. Now, in the book, she strongly recommends practicing mindfulness because it's very helpful in dealing with your emotions, and it is. She also talks about box breathing, which is this breathing technique where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold your breath again for 4 seconds, and you do this cycle of breathing, which will help calm you down. Now, moving on, she talks about our thoughts, and she talks about the fact that we use our thoughts to make sense of things, right? And the power of your thoughts is how much you actually believe in them, how much of a spotlight that you put on the particular thoughts that you have. And so sometimes what you got to do is you got to step back from your thoughts and see them for what they are. And there's this whole idea of practicing metacognition, which is thinking about your thoughts. Saying to yourself, oh, I'm thinking this thing, and really taking a step back from your thoughts as if you're witnessing them from outside of yourself. And this is helpful because it creates separation from yourself and your thoughts, and also makes it less personal as far as your thoughts go. Another big idea from the book is to practice self-compassion. So, self-compassion is basically asking yourself, what would you say to someone you care about in this situation? It's not beating yourself up. It's not lambasting yourself. And what you got to do is pretend like you are a trainer of a boxer and you're in their corner. If you're that trainer, you're not going to sit here and say, hey, you just got knocked out. Hey, you're getting killed out there. No, you're going to say things that actually help them. You're going to say, hey, you got this. You're a 200-pound Italian tank, which is a great thing to say to a man, not so much to a woman. But anyways, you know what I mean. Pump yourself up like you are in your own corner, because you have to be in your own corner. You have to be encouraging yourself in order to be successful. And I'll talk more about that in another section. But another thing that she talks about is journaling. Journaling to understand what are, again, those thoughts, those emotions, those behaviors, those physical sensations that you have when you're in a bad mood, right? And then also think about times that you felt good. What are those thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and physical sensations? Because once you figure out what those things are, what you can do is you can kind of try to replicate those things in order to make them happen again, or in order to prevent the bad moods from happening again. And again, like I stated earlier, focus on what it is that you actually want. Focus on what you want. You might get what you need. And basically what I'm saying is you might just see the things that you need by writing it down. And that's what I'm saying. What's been found up in your thoughts, also your emotions. That's what I'm saying. You need to be knowing your freaking behaviors and the sensations that inside of you when you're in a bad mood. So basically what I'm saying, write it on down. You might be able to feel good now. That's what I do when I come through journaling it. Right in the moleskin, I'm just rolling to a better time. And that's what I say when I just find myself writing it down. And that's how I go. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I know. All right. So that's what you got to do. Write down what are your thoughts, what are your emotions, what are your behaviors, and your physical sensations when you are in a bad place and when you are in a good place, to help you to get to a good place when you're in a bad place, and to get to a good place when you want to be in a good place, which is all the time. Another thing she talks about in the book is focusing on the basics. And I'm going to call the basics the big five. Because like she states in the book, the basics are far from basic. One of the first basics, exercising. Exercising the way you can, in small ways if you have to. Try to do it outside if possible. Try to do it in the morning if possible. And just like anything else in life, some beats none every single day. The next one is sleep. So one thing she says is your daily activities affect your sleep and vice versa. So make sure that you're doing good daily activities. And when you sleep, just try to relax and your body will do the rest. Another thing is your nutrition, which I won't get into too much, but did you know that there's a Norwegian diet? Of course there is, but it's not something that I thought about looking into, but now I am looking into it. Another thing is your routine. Your routine, you have to have predictability with a mixture of some adventure. So you have to have a good routine every single day. My adventure includes grabbing random things out of the fridge without looking at the expiration date and playing a little bit of Russian roulette. Let's go. And the last of the basics is human connection. And one of the things she says is don't shy away from people when you're in a bad mood. That actually makes your bad mood even worse. And when you connect with people, if you're in a bad mood, you don't even need to talk about your problems. But as you connect with other people, it changes your biology and your psychology. And if you decide to talk about your problems, it oftentimes helps the person helping you, because people are wired to help each other. So talk to other people, connect with others, and forget what your mama said, go talk to strangers. All right, so this next section is about motivation. And here's the thing, motivation is like your drunk uncle. Sometimes it shows up and sometimes it doesn't. So, what you got to do is sometimes you got to create motivation, just like you got to create your drunk uncle. Okay, that's where the analogy falls apart. But, anyways, sometimes just by moving, just by doing things, you are creating motivation. So, you can't wait for yourself to get motivated, because sometimes motivation doesn't show up and you just got to do it. And when you do it, it will show up. So how are you going to get motivated? Well, you could watch clips from the different Rocky movies, but what if you don't have a TV or a VCR in front of you? Do people still watch things on VHS? I don't know. But you get motivated by staying connected to your goals, by writing them down, keeping them front and center. So I have this one technique that I stole from a man named Hugh Jackman. And what he does is he writes down what he wants to get done during the day in the past tense, like it's already been done. And what I do is from there, I underline the keywords or the verbs that I need to focus on to get those things done. So as I go through my day, I check off each one of those words, and that helps me to keep it going. And it feels good looking at all the check marks that I have on that piece of paper. So focus on your goals by using this technique or by journaling or by doing something, and that's going to help keep you motivated. And as you continue to move forward, one of the best things to do is to, again, practice self-compassion. Do not shame yourself, because the thing about it is self-criticism leads to depression, not motivation. You will not drive yourself to success by beating yourself up. This has been proven by research. Recently, I actually went to perform at an event, and my choice of my performance ended up with me not doing well. And a couple friends of mine were there, and after the fact, I really wanted to beat myself up. But my friends gave me some really great perspective, and they were like, hey, one of them's a really accomplished public speaker, and he said, how are you going to use this to get better? And the other friend of mine who is in medicine and in science was like, use this as a data point and move forward from it. And both of them told me I did a lot better than I thought I did. And so if I had not had those friends with me, who knows, I might be ruminating about it right now. And that's why it's so important to have friends and people in your corner to help you through all the things that you're processing. All right, next thing I'm going to talk about is pre-planning and having a crisis plan in place. Nobody wants to deal with crisis, but things happen in life and you need a break in case of emergency plan, because you know that things are going to come up that are going to trip you up. You know there are going to be hurdles, and you have to have a plan for those hurdles to overcome them. So if you know that sometimes you go on a spiral, maybe when you feel yourself in a spiral or in a bad situation, you go, hey, it's time for me to take a long walk. Or, hey, it's time for me to go hang out with my neighbor. Or, hey, it's time for me to join the U.S. Marines. Just kidding. That's crazy. But you have a plan in place. And when you have a situation where you're going to be tripped up by a bad behavior, make that bad behavior as hard as possible. So one of the things that she says is to have a second alarm outside of your room if sometimes you end up sleeping through your alarm or turning it off and going back to bed. So have a plan in place to make doing the bad things that you oftentimes do get tripped up by as difficult as possible, and also to have a plan so you don't end up going down those same roads that have tripped you up in the past, and you make a better choice this time around. Another thing she talks about is thinking about your future self. So when your future self looks back at you, what will your future self be proud of? What your future self would pump his or her fist on, right? You'll be like, yo, that is something that I am looking back and feeling good about doing that thing, right? What your future self will be focused on in the future. Think about the person that you're going to be when you're older and how that older version of yourself would look back on what you're doing right now. One time I was at this dance event and the MC told us to have a moment of self reflection. And as I was doing my moment of self reflection, I pictured a future older version of myself. And I was sitting in front of my older version of myself and I was bowing to my future self and honoring my future self. And it made me think about how my actions today need to honor my future self and also how my future self didn't give me any money. What's up with that? I'm just kidding. But it made me think about my future self and how I want to really honor the future version of myself. Another great exercise in the book is making a pro and con list on changing versus keeping things the same. You got to understand that you could just change things up in your life, and there are pluses and minuses. You could keep the same things up in your life, but do you want to do that now? That's the question. And that is a question because here's the deal. There are pluses to keeping things the same, believe it or not. And there are also minuses to keeping things the same, of course. But you really got to weigh things out. And as I weighed these things out, it really motivated me to make some pretty serious changes in my life. Now, there's some great exercises in the book, and I can't go through all of them, but trust me on this. The exercises are phenomenal, and I highly, highly recommend that you pick up the book in order to do the exercises in the book. All right, so if you are feeling like you just drank from a fire hose, that makes two of us. I was planning to try to knock this out in just maybe a couple of episodes, but I've come to realize that this book is so packed with so much good stuff that I need to pepper it out so I don't overwhelm you with too much information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out this series in a number of different episodes, and I'm going to actually publish more often than I usually do. So instead of twice a month, I'll be doing 4 times a month while I'm in this series as I go through this book. And that is how it's going to go. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. If you are enjoying this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. That helps it out significantly. And props to you for investing in yourself and learning about how you're going to change your own life by implementing these strategies into your life. This is Your One Life. I'm Kim Young Kim. I hope you have a great day, a great week, and until next time, peace!